One of the biggest mistakes I made early on in my real estate career when I first started back in 2008 was really dealing with contractors. As a real estate investor, that's a huge part of your business. Whether you're flipping a house, whether you're doing a BRRRR, whether you're buying a rental, is dealing with contractors, dealing with sub-trades. Now, in the beginning, the first couple of projects, the first couple of contractors that I hired, I got burned. There was one point where I gave the contractor 50% up front because he said that was his procedure working with people. I had vetted him as the best I could. I did an interview and I paid him. And then what happened was, because I paid him way too much up front, he took forever to finish the job. And this was one common mistake that I see for a lot of real estate investors. And the other thing that I also noticed too is, if you're paying a contractor, let's say you're paying a sub-trade, $1,000 deposit, they're just painting for you. You give them $1,000 and boom, they vanish. They take off because you found them online, you found them on a classified, you found them on a marketplace, Facebook or Kijiji, or something like that, and it's very, very unreliable. The thing with contractors and sub-trades, it's very hard to get your money back, and even if you go to the police, they treat it as a civil suit, meaning there's essentially nothing you can do, or very little, especially if you don't know where that contractor is. Now, the other mistake too that I made early on was, when I did have a good contractor, my last progression payment, so essentially when I'm hiring a contractor, I am paying them in small installments. I pay them a deposit when they first start the job, just to start buying some materials so they can start working on the job. And as I see progression based on my contract, I will give them a little bit of money as I see them do the work. Now, the other thing I started doing too many years ago when I started was, I would pay them because at the end of the job, when they finished it and the scope of work was done, I paid them the final progression payment a little bit too early. And what I mean is, I would pay them essentially without having a full lookout. And because I felt pressured by them because I was younger, I'd pay them the last final payment. And then when I'd walk through or I see deficiencies, or worse yet, the buyer would move into the property, or the tenant would move in, and they're starting to use the tap, they're starting to use the faucets, they're starting to use different things that the contractor worked on. Maybe it's cabinets or things like that, and then they noticed that there was deficiencies, and then going back to the contractor, having them come out to finish the job was like pulling teeth because they got paid. There's no motivation there because you paid them the final progression payment. I see this far too often. So if you're in the real estate business, or even if you're a homeowner and you're working with a contractor, the biggest leverage that you have is money, meaning how much money you're paying them, how much deposit you're giving them, and really using that and then matching that with progression, having timelines of, hey, if you do X, Y, Z, you get the next progression payment. The other thing too I see a lot of people do is, they'll hire a contractor who promises them everything. They're saying that they can start right away, they can start on a specific day, but then when that day comes, they keep delaying it. And then what happens is you're paying interest on that money, whether you're doing a JV or an equity deal. So you have to vet them very, very careful up front and really just see if they don't start at a specific date, that everything is outlined in the agreement. Now, in a future video, I'm going to be talking in more detail of how I hire contractors, where I find them, whether it's through referrals or whether it's through my network, and the contracts that I use, the questions that I ask, just to make sure that they have the capacity to do the work, they have the experience, they have the employees or the sub-trades to do the job properly. Because at the end of the day, real estate it's a quick moving business, especially if you're borrowing money like we do. You want to make sure that everything is progressing. So if I can leave you with a few things, as I mentioned in the video, is using your deposits and what you're paying them as leverage to make sure the job gets done, and never ever pay a contractor 50% of the job up front, because you're not going to see that. That's a huge payment for contractors to have a lot of money where, again, they might take off. That's worst case scenario. They might take off, or they might take a while to do their work because you just pay them a huge amount up front.